I have trouble saying. I'm happy to say that I am Robert Blecker on GordonandTheWhale.com, and I can't beg you to see the movie because I didn't make it. I'm just the subject of it. But I will guarantee one thing, which is if you go see this movie, it will make you look at the death penalty differently. It will make you think differently. It will make you feel differently because it was a very strange relationship that Darryl and I had, and it's one I think that's worth thinking about and feeling.
I'm here with Robert Blecker for the documentary Robert Blecker Wants Me Dead. Can you tell us, for the ones that haven't seen it, what this documentary is about?
It's about my relationship with Darryl Holton. Darryl was on death row in Tennessee and killed his four children. And it was important to me that he take responsibility for what he do, and it was important to me that he die. And it was important to him that I come to understand him and that I take responsibility for my feelings about him. And so we had a very strange relationship. I kept on telling him he needed to be dead. He kept on telling me I needed a psychiatrist to find out why it was so important to me. And Darryl was brilliant and had a wry sense of humor. And so it's a very strange relationship, excuse me, between somebody who's in favor of the death penalty, as I am, for those, and only those who deserve it, as he did and does, and somebody on death row who considered me his friend.
How did they approach you about making this and convince you to want to do it and everything?
Well, I've been spending time on death rows in various states with a video camera and have had privileged access into maximum security prisons, and was looking to make a series of documentaries, TV documentaries, and am looking still to make a series. And so through a mutual friend, one of the producers, Richard Bromowitz, I was introduced to Bruce Klein, who owns Atlas Media. And Bruce came down to the office. He saw some of the footage. We spoke for about 2 or 3 hours. Remember, I'm looking for a partner, a skilled, experienced documentarian to make documentaries with me. And he cut me off in the middle and said, well, I'm not interested in making a documentary with you. And I said, oh, okay. He said, but I am interested in making a documentary about you. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, I don't think they're the story. I think you're the story. Which struck me as weird and bizarre and not at all to my liking. So I said, I don't think so. And he said, well, why don't you consider it? Let's talk about what it would be like. And he started talking, and we kept on talking for a couple of months. And I raised objection after objection because it takes a good deal of trust. You don't know, because I surrendered control. And he said, I have the perfect filmmaker for you, Ted Schillinger. And he introduced me to Ted, and I spent several hours with Ted and became aware of how intelligent he was and how serious he was about understanding this perspective, with which he has no real affection. He's an abolitionist. He started out against the death penalty. He remains against the death penalty at the end of this. And so I had to be convinced that he would do a fair portrait of somebody's life who didn't feel as he felt. Yeah. And so it started out that way. Not with Darryl as the key figure. That just happened.
What do you want people to get out of this film versus what do you think people will get out of it after watching it?
What I wanted people to get out of it, and I guess I still do, is the complexity of the perspective that ultimately I'm convinced is still right. That is, that some people deserve to die, and we have an obligation to execute them. But having said that, I want the people to understand that these are human beings. I mean, it's so much easier to be in favor of the death penalty if you can just dismiss them as just scum. They're animals. They're not human. And you just abstract from them. They're not people. They didn't have backgrounds, and that's the easy one. And that's not so. In fact, if we embrace the death penalty, you have to administer it very reluctantly and with great moral discrimination. You have to take the time and the trouble to find out who these people are and to care about them. So I want people, in the end, this will be and is, I guess, the only documentary that's ever been made that I know of that is a non-propagandistic film, although I guess opponents would say, yes, this is just the same kind of propaganda we make, only on the other side, but I don't think so, because remember, it was made by somebody who was against it. I wanted a full and honest portrait of the position and the complexity, the moral complexity and the difficulty involved in it. As it turned out, Darryl became the perfect vehicle for that. And my relationship with him and the agony that I went through and still go through. I miss Darryl at one level. I wanted him dead. I told him that. He knew it. He considered me his friend. but it still hurts. I want us to do it, and I want us to hurt while we do it. And it's difficult to present that nuanced, complex view generally. When I do media interviews, standardly with newspapers and et cetera, as a law professor and a public figure in favor of it, they generally want me to take a clear position, like the easy position, for it, against it, the soundbite. And I wanted this documentary to be something much more than that, and I think Ted has achieved that very much. I mean, it's not for me to judge. I guess it's for you to judge.
Have you seen? I mean, I guess you've seen the final cut.
I saw it, yes, on a small computer screen, only 2 days ago.
Oh, really?
2 nights ago for the first time.
What did you think?
I thought it was an honest portrait. I thought it was I wish there were many things there that aren't there. I'd be happy to talk to you about that, what I wish were there, that isn't. But what is there, I understand why Ted chose what he chose. I think it's an honest portrait. I think it's an accurate portrait. I don't think it sufficiently reflects some life-affirming parts of me. I mean, I have 2 projects going at the law school, one of which is dedicated to finding those people who are serving life sentences for murders they didn't commit. They committed manslaughter. They're not to the innocence. It's not an innocence project. They're guilty, but they're not guilty of murder. They're guilty of manslaughter. They don't deserve life in prison. They deserve 10 years in prison. And yet we've too easily put them to life in prison. And I'm looking to move for executive clemency. I have another project in which I have a student who's reviewing all the people on Oklahoma's death row, and we're trying to find out the ones who are not in that same moral universe. They're not the torture killers. They're not the serial rapist murderers. They're not in the same moral universe, and they shouldn't be on death row. And I'm trying to help move for executive clemency because, as a retributivist, I'm just as concerned that those who don't deserve it don't get it as I am that those who do, do. Now, for my taste, there's not enough of that in the film. You don't see the life-affirming part of my professional work. You see the death-affirming part. And so, but in terms of what's there and how it's presented and the critics are there, I think Ted, I mean, I'm no film critic, but I don't love documentaries as a form. Even though I tend to make my own, I don't, it doesn't feel like a documentary. And a couple of people who've seen it have told me the same thing. And it doesn't feel like a documentary.
What is it? Like, what do you mean?
It feels like a movie.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It feels like a movie. It doesn't feel like a documentary. My problem with documentaries is that generally, it strikes me the order doesn't really much matter. The bits are there, and the pieces are there, and the whole is not that much greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
But here, it happened, and so there's a story. It can only happen in one order.
Why do you think he chose electrocution over, like, lethal injection?
I know why. The press misreported it.
Really?
They reported it as his desire for martyrdom. Others reported it as his desire to really challenge the electric chair. When I asked him, he gave me typical Darryl answer. He said, look, when you go into a store and you buy some clothes, and you look at the clothes and you decide you want them, and you look at the price tag and you see the price you have to pay for them, then you take it off the rack and you go to the cashier to check out. When you go to pay for your clothes, you don't stand in front of the cashier and say, listen, I'd like a discount. He said, I murdered my 4 children. The price I knew was the electric chair. The fact that later Tennessee switched to lethal injection does not give me the right to ask for a discount. It's time to cash out. I pay the price, the original price.
That's good. Are you satisfied with his final statement?
No.
No?
Well, I was curious, if I can turn the tables, how did you interpret his final statement? Was it clear to you what it meant?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it was. Tell me.
Yeah, I thought it was him answering your question with, like, do you regret what you did?
Oh, you do? Oh, then, that would be, if that were true. You mean he was talking to me?
Yeah.
Well, that's the first I'm touched. I'm moved.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me that could be it.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that's what he meant.
Oh, well, well, thank you for that. I'd like to believe that. That would change the whole meaning of the event to me.
Yeah, after I saw that, I was just like, there's some kind of closure.
Oh. Well, you may have just given me the closure that I've been looking for. It never occurred to me. That interpretation has never occurred to me.